Okay, Richard's got us going now. He's got past his silencing me mode. I can yell louder than the speakers if I have to. Less control. Okay. Last week we looked at the reconciliation of Jacob with Esau. How many years passed between when he left the land of Israel, went to Padan Aram, and came back? How many years? 20 years, good. And he returns to Canaan, makes things right with his brother. And there's quite a bit we're going to skip over just because of timeline and their little incidents. Some of them are bigger, but Jacob learns quite a bit of things. He's a changed man. He's no longer Jacob. What's his name now called? Israel. What's Israel mean? Anybody remember? A prince with God. Prince with God. And in fact, the way God says it, you've wrestled, you've conquered man and God. It's sort of a way of saying you humbled yourself. That's the way you got a hold of my attention. That's the way you overcame me as your resistor, by getting your heart right. And you remember that whole account, how that he wrestled with the angel and so forth. Well, Jacob then moves to a place called Shechem, Genesis 34. And it records an account with where Jacob's daughter Dinah, which this is really about the only time we get really much of a story on her. She ends up being basically, it appears to be raped. I don't know if you say it is, or it was just a one night stand. But she appears to be somewhat going along with it, and but brothers take revenge, one of them being Levi, and goes in and murders all the men of Shechem after they had deceived them, because the people of Shechem wanted to join ranks with the Israelites. And the boys, this is where Dad seemed to be uninvolved. The boys say, well, as long as they get circumcised like we are, then they can be part of our group, join with us. And while they all submitted to circumcision, they're sore for the next day or so. Well, while they're all in bed sore, the Israelite boys came in and murdered them, and then did some horrible things. And Jacob, or Israel, actually said, you've made my name a stink in the land by what you did. And he will come after them later when it comes time to blessing on his deathbed because of what they did. Two of the boys did. So then we have where he moves on to Bethel. Genesis 35 describes another encounter between God and now Israel, where he's calling him to go to Bethel, affirming his name change, and confirming once again the covenant that he has made with him. The same Abrahamic covenant we've looked at up to this point. Abraham and Isaac, and now Jacob's received. Today we're going to look at chapter 37. And Jacob, as he's now going to be called pretty much for the rest of this time, Israel, is living with his family near a place called Hebron. And we're going to look at the chapter in two segments. We're going to look at Joseph's dream and Joseph's tragic departure, as we will see. This is probably one of the most interesting parts of the book of Genesis, I think, is the whole story of Joseph and how things play out. And so we're going to see quite a bit plays out here. So I need you to open up your Bibles to Genesis 37. I was thinking maybe in a couple Sunday nights, not tonight, but next Sunday night, we might do a movie night just that does this story. I've got a live action play drama that does the story of Joseph, and it's really kind of neat, and it's done really well to a biblical account. I don't know if I've shown that to everybody or not. I know some of our people have seen it, but maybe on a Sunday night in a couple weeks you might do that, just to go along with what we're looking at here. So, all right, so we need to read verses 1 through 11. 1 through 11, I'll get 1 through 5. First readers, 1 through 5. You want to start us off, David? Okay. 6 through 11. I'll give that next one. Who wants to do 6? Bill, back in the back. Okay. And Brett, I know Brett's visiting here. He hasn't been here very much, but Brett, I know, knows how to read really good, so if you want to volunteer anytime, go ahead. We'll count you like you're regular here, okay? All right. Go ahead, start us off, David.
And Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him, and could not speak peaceably unto him. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto him, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, dividing sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheep arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood around about, and made obeisance
Obeisance.
to my sheep. And his brethren said to him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us, or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet more of his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obedience to me. And he told it to his father and to his brethren. His father rebuked him and said to him, What is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee to the earth? And his brethren envied him, but his father observed the saying.
Okay. All right, so where's Joseph in the birth order? Anybody remember? He's not the youngest. There's one before him, one after him, I'm sorry. Yeah, so Benjamin's actually the youngest. He's 11th in the 12 boys, right? Okay, but he's being treated with a little bit of honor, which is not new to the family of Abraham, is it? No. How old was Joseph at the time? 17 years old. So while feeding the sheep with his brothers, what does Joseph do? No, first off, what's he doing with his brothers? He brings an evil report to Dad. He's a little tattletale. He's a little snitch to tell on his older brothers. And it seems that Dad is going along with it because Dad is using him as his little spy to go and keep a watch on these older boys. Do you think the older boys know he's doing that? Yes, they do. They know he's doing it. How is the relationship between Israel, or Jacob, and Joseph described? Loved him more than all his other children. Yeah, what specific relationship does this remind us of that we've seen so far? Say it. I heard Jacob and Esau. Yeah, Isaac favored who? Esau, and who favored Jacob? Yeah, so he's come out of a family of favoritism already, and that sort of happened even with Abraham's a little bit. Maybe not at the same level, but it did happen for a little bit. Remember, that Ishmael might live, and there was this attitude of Ishmael, but at the same time, it wasn't nearly the same. There wasn't like showing one's better than the other for a long time that like this one did. This one was horrible in the way they treated each other. And it seems that Jacob did not learn that lesson, did he? He didn't learn how destructive that is to a family, to do that to your children. What is significant about Israel giving Joseph this robe? Yeah, it's a sign to all the rest that Joseph is my favored one. Boy, it wasn't just that he treated him that way. He made it clear by visibly putting this robe on him. In fact, according to some of my notes, they said that this was often done as a symbol of prominence in the family. And to be given something like that among the brethren. It was sort of like it was something that was supposed to go to the firstborn. And this one's getting it. Yes. He's already been born. It's just he's not the favored one because he's the second of the two that come from Rachel. If you remember Rachel is going to have Benjamin. She ends up, if you know the story, she ends up dying because of it. And Joseph is really the one that's favored, kind of in place of Rachel. Remember, he had a favorite wife. Which one was it? Rachel. And so he's going to show that favoritism toward the son that comes out of that, the firstborn that comes out of that. And basically treat him like he is the one of prominence. Well, he should have been if Laban had not been involved. But it is what it is, you know. You got to live with the issue there. So, So Joseph then has some dreams. Anybody remember explain the dreams real quick? Give me one of the dreams he has. The sheaves, not hay bales. Yep. So you have the sheaves. You have 11 sheaves bow down to the one sheaf in the middle. Is that pretty clear what that's saying? That's a pretty obvious. You don't have to have great knowledge to interpret what that dream seems to be meaning. Okay, one is going to be better than all the others. And by the way, he's already got that happening. Daddy's favoring him over all the rest. Okay, what's the second one? The sun, the moon. So first off, it's just 11 sheaves. Now it's 11 stars plus sun and moon. What's that implying? His parents are going to bow down to him as well. Now, I know Mama's gone off the scene at this point, but we are seeing this attitude where he's saying, I'm not just going to be better than my brothers, I'm going to be better than my parents. And in fact, at that point, if you remember, Jacob rebukes him for that. He says that your brothers might, but you're not. How dare you incorporate me into this? He was going along with the story until that point. He kind of gets in Joseph's face at that point. Now, hold on a second. Are these legitimate dreams? They appear to be. Now, the Scripture doesn't say anything about Joseph's motives. So we don't know his motives, but does he seem to be a little bit of naive, at least in the fact that he would say that to his brothers? Especially knowing they hate him already. It was sort of like a little bit, maybe possibly a little bit of arrogance and a little bit of naivete, if you will, if he's that way. I don't know if I'd even call it naive. I almost think it's just he just knew what he was doing and he did it. If he didn't know what he was doing, he was naive, and he was stupidly naive at that point. Does he love God? We don't know anything yet at this point about whether he does, whether his heart's right with God in any way, or whether he's just soaked up Dad's favoritism so much that he's let it go to his head. You know, I don't know, and I know people try to say there was nothing said wrong about Joseph. No, there's nothing that's said wrong about Joseph anywhere in the Scripture. He's one of those few people in the Bible that God never mentioned anything bad about the guy, said anything wrong about him. But it does appear that he's allowed some of his dad's favoritism to seep in to him. In this account, we need to remember that even though Joseph is being treated somewhat like the firstborn, who's the firstborn? Anybody remember? Reuben's the firstborn. And he is, as we're going to see here in a little bit, going to try to keep maintaining that firstborn privilege, hopefully, despite what's going on with the rest of the brothers. Because the rest of the brothers want everything they can do. They're going to look for any way they can to take down Joseph. They hate Joseph. And Reuben's going to try to, even though I'm sure Reuben in his own heart has some bit of a hatred, because he's sort of an enemy to Reuben. If you think about it, he's in a position in which he is taking Reuben's spot And Reuben has every reason to be jealous of what's being done. Yes, sir. I guess you probably can. Yeah. They hated him in the fact that he was basically being treated with special treatment, but they envied the fact that Dad didn't treat them the same way. They envied the fact that he was getting this and they weren't. You know, I was to say this: do we not know this is a true statement that dads that don't show love to their kids, the kids want that love, and they end up acting out to get that love from a dad? Yeah, and as we're going to see, I'm going to point it out later. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but you're going to see that their hatred is not just toward him. It's going to be directed toward Dad and what they do. And I'll show you that in a little bit. That they're mad at what Dad's doing because he's the one that's made this a mess in the way it has turned out. All right. Well, so Joseph's brothers, they hate, they envy, as Bill pointed out there in the text. And we're going to look at what happens next. Go to 37:12. And we're going to work down through 36. So through to the end of the chapter here. So let's do 12 through 15 first. We've got 3 verses, so if I get some people, you want to do that one? Okay, 12 through 15. 16 through 20. Okay, you want to do 16 through 20? 21 through 25. You want to do that one? 26 through 30. And then 30, I'll just give 30 to 30, 31 to 36 for the next one. 31 to 36. Brother Fred. All right. Everybody remember their number, right? Where they're at? Okay, go ahead and start us off, Wayne. Mm-hmm. Sixty. Cometh. Yep. And one more verse. Okay, 21. Go ahead. Yep. Gilead. Hold on. Is that past the the number? Okay, 27. I'll let you pick up at there, 27. Okay, 31. Okay, anybody notice it said that Joseph had daughters, plural? Where do those daughters come from? Think about those boys. What do they got? They got wives. Do you think he's probably treating them like they're his daughters? In fact, that's how we call them today, right? Daughters-in-law. So I imagine that's what that means. So when you see people say there's little contradictions here or there in the Bible, just have to remember how to read the Bible. There's things you got to kind of see behind the scenes a little bit that makes sense of things. Well, he's got one daughter. That's all we know of. Now, he might have granddaughters, so that could be incorporated in that as well. So, but he's only got one. Remember, Dinah was the one daughter, he had. Yeah. Dinah was, I think Dinah actually might be, is she after Joseph? Yeah, I forget what the order is when Dinah shows up on the scene, but she's close to Joseph, if I remember right, in birth order, so I can't remember exactly where that goes. All right, well, there's some other apparent contradictions we'll look at here in just a minute, but what happened once Joseph arrives in Shechem? Now, hold on for a minute. Dad has sent him to go where? To go find his brothers. Yeah, they're in Hebron, and where he's going, he's supposed to go up to Bethel and find his brothers, up to Shechem to find his brothers. Let me get it right there. And he goes and he finds his brothers. It's some 50 miles away. You think he sent him alone 50 miles to go find his brothers? It's not like they're a couple yards over, a couple pastures over. We're talking about he's gone several miles out of the way to go find his brothers, okay? Yeah, whatever it would have taken to get there, I don't know. So he gets to Shechem. What's he find out? They're not in Shechem. Where are they? They're in Dothan, okay? They're in Dothan. Why did Joseph's brothers... Well, let me go back for a moment. So he starts traveling to Dothan. What do his brothers notice? They spotted that little coat walking toward them. He's coming to spy on us again. Find out why we're over here, not over there, when we should have been. And what did they make plans to do? To slay their brother. Why do they want to slay their brother? They still hate him, but then they said something about something he's done or something he's had. They said, then what will become of his dreams? His dreams are saying he's going to rule over us. We kill him, that'll stop that one. Right? Okay, remember who's firstborn? Reuben. Okay? What does he propose to do? Throw him in a pit rather than killing him. And what's he planning to do secretly? To rescue him and return him back to his dad. Why? Do you think Reuben likes Joseph any better than his other brothers do? It's because Reuben is concerned about preserving his own firstborn spot. And he already knows it's on the rocks. And that's what he's wanting to do. He's trying to save Joseph, I would think. Maybe I'm reading his motives a little bit, but I'm going to show you here in a minute that it appears that is his motive. That he's concerned about saving his own position. And if something happens to Joseph, who's going to be held accountable for the most part? Who will be held first accountable? Reuben will be. He's the oldest, okay? So, how was Joseph treated when he finally gets to his brothers? They took his multicolored coat away from him, and then what did they do with him? Threw him in a pit, purposely without water, right? You don't get any bit of happiness down there. We're just going to throw you in a dry, hot pit. When the Ishmaelites appeared, what did Judah propose? All of them thought they were going to slay him later, right? We're going to throw him in the pit. We're going to slay him later after we get done eating. And then while they're sitting down there in Dothan, what do they see off in the distance? A caravan of Ishmaelites. And when the Ishmaelites appeared, what does what does Judah propose to do? Hey, let's make some profit off of this thing. We'll get exactly what we want. He's out of our lives, and we'll all get paid for it. We'll all get paid for it. There are two motives that they have for harming their brother. And what is that, would you say, is obviously by what they're about to do here? Two motives. One comes out of envy and greed, right? They hate their brother, so they're jealous of the fact they've been basically kicked to the curb by dad all these years because of Joseph. They want that to be returned back to them, and let's make some money off of the thing. So envy and greed there, or hatred and greed you could put as well. How much money did they make off of Joseph? 20 pieces of silver, the common price for a slave, right? What was Reuben's reaction? Obviously, this happened when Reuben wasn't there. He must have walked off. We don't know where he went. He must have walked off, went away. He gets back, finds that pit empty, and he finds out that they did what they did to him. How does he react? Yeah, it says he tore his clothes in anguish. He was grieved over what they had done because he had wanted to rescue Joseph. And in verse 30, I want you to look here. This is where I think you can see a little bit of his motive. And again, it says here, he returned to his brethren and said, the child is not. And then he says, and I, whither shall I go? What do you think he means by that? Whither shall I go? Not where will I live? That might be some bit of the answer. Because whenever I get home and Joseph's not here, and they find out what they did, Dad finds out what we did, he's going to go after me, and then where am I going? Yeah, I'm about to lose everything. What I've been so desperate to try to keep through this whole thing, I'm about to lose, even worse than I already was at this point. So how did they decide to cover this up, what they did? Because they know it's all going to fall on Reuben here if this comes out the way it does. How are we going to cover this sin up and hide it before Dad? Yeah. Maybe there's mountain lions or something out there. I don't know. All right, so here's a thought. Is this the first time a goat has been used to deceive Dad in time past? Anybody remember this? Dad used a goat to deceive Dad, right? Remember that? Jacob did that to his dad, Isaac. Had a goat slain, put the goat skins on, used the goat meat to make venison, and feed dad. They're just, man, it's just like, it just keeps cycling, right? I mean, it's like what goes around comes around, keeps happening back and back and back. Oh, man, that's awful. Now, how long did, when Israel or Jacob gets this message, how long does he intend to mourn for? Yeah, he says, I'm going to go down into the grave this way. He intends to be broken until he dies. And I would get the idea that until Joseph is once again rediscovered, because we know he goes off as a slave to Egypt and is rediscovered by his dad nearly 20 years after that, it appears that he's still broken by the time when he's forced to have to bring Benjamin in. He doesn't even want to let Benjamin go because now he's treating Benjamin like he treated Joseph, and he doesn't want Benjamin to leave. And his sons, as we're going to find out next time, are going to have this kind of attitude where they don't even want to take Benjamin either because they don't want to see it destroy their dad like Joseph's apparent death did. They don't think dad is going to be able to handle it anymore if he sees this. So what ends up happening to Joseph as a result? He's sold, and where does he end up? In Egypt as a slave to who? A man named Potiphar, who is an Egyptian official. Apparently, he's an official in such a way that he oversees executions, as we will get a little glimpse of maybe at a later point here. He's a captain of the guard, so he's a high-ranking officer that Potiphar is going to be working for. Okay? Once again, we see the turmoil that comes out of a family that never learns to love one another equally. Favoritism destroys families, doesn't it? You got a favorite child in your family, and I know I'm, I guess, the only person, well, he's okay to be a favorite child. He's an only child, so don't worry. He's the favorite and the least favorite at the same time, right? Okay. But if you got a family of children, you better show equal love to your children. They need to see that because this is what it does. And we've seen it multiple times now. And it actually ends up turning against the parent every time. Did you notice that? It turned against Jacob turned against Isaac when he did it. And now it's turned against Jacob and when he did it. The fact that those brothers held the secret for all those years, never told Dad, demonstrated they hated Dad as well. They weren't just hating Joseph. They wanted Dad to feel like they lost him permanently. That's how they wanted it to be. Because if they had told Dad, one day in a moment of grief they wanted to make things right, they could have maybe gone down and found him if he's still alive in Egypt. But they never did. Well, not until he's rediscovered do they explain what happened. Now, I told you there's another apparent contradiction here, not just the daughters here, but did anybody notice a name we've already looked at before being used a few times in this passage? It's Abraham's first son, Ishmael. Did anybody notice Ishmaelites were being used, that name? Look down at the passage here, verse number 27. It says, "Come and let us sell them to the Ishmaelites," right? So you got these merchants that are Ishmaelites. Then look at verse 28. "Then there passed by Midianite merchantmen, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver." Did you see Midianites are now used and then Ishmaelites are used? Is there a contradiction here? So there are two different groups here? Oh, okay, that's an unusual interpretation. I've never heard it explained that way. Is it possible that the Ishmaelites and the Midianites are one and the same people? Especially if we're talking about Midian being land, the land of Midian, that they're a family of Ishmaelites that are part of the land of Midian, that are actually are Midianites too. It's similar to us saying we are Americans, yet at the same time we're Christians. We belong to two different nations, don't we? Or two different kingdoms, if you will, right? And we're part of the same, but one is because of where we live, and another one is because of who we belong to. Does that make sense? So people will throw these up as contradictions. You just got to make sure you know how to read between the lines and maybe read with a little bit of objective mind in reading, okay? So is this a contradiction then? No. It's just takes a little bit of reason to work through and figure out what's going on. And there's another possible answer to that, and that could be the fact that the Ishmaelites and a Midianite group married together, and so they both have Midianite, Ishmaelite blood in them, if you will. So that's a possibility as well. And in fact, that might be both the answers. That they live in Midian, they're Ishmaelites, but they also have married into the Midianites as well. So the irony comes out of all of this is that, as I said already, you show favoritism, just like Dad showed favoritism, it's going to come back again and do the same thing. And almost, again, the irony is that they did the very same thing that Jacob did to his dad. They deceived him and used it for their own purposes. All right. Yeah, what comes around, what goes around. This is another way of saying you reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. Now, I got a worksheet here. I'm going to take a few minutes to work through, and then I think we will be almost done here with our lesson for today. If I can get you to pass those around. Pass them quick there for us, real quick. And this is called a providential journey. And what we're going to talk about is that Joseph being sold into slavery, sold to Egypt, was not an accident. In fact, one of the very last verses of the book of Genesis is where Joseph's brothers come to him and they're concerned that he's going to exact his revenge now that he's in the position to do so upon the boys for what they did to him. And he says this, he says, "You meant it for evil." Let me read it right, read the verse here. "But God meant it for good, to save much people alive. What you thought to do to me for evil, God thought for good." And that's important to remember, is that Joseph understood the working of God behind the scene. And one of the most amazing stories in all of the Bible, I think, is Joseph's, how he handled it. You know, even though it appears that at one point he might have been either naive or arrogant toward his brothers by what he did, by acting as Dad's little spy, and then having the audacity to tell his brothers that he's going to be better than them in his dreams, it appears that Joseph, somewhere down the line, grew up very quickly and came to realize that God was working behind the scenes, and he honored God through all of what happened. Through all of what happened. What sparked that, I don't know. Or was it already in his heart and he was just a naive boy until he got sold into slavery? I don't know. But we see that Joseph demonstrates a very big picture of Christ. Has anybody ever made that connection before? That Joseph is very much like Christ in the typology, hated by his own brethren, and used ultimately by what they did to him. They brought about their own safety by trying to destroy Joseph. And slaying Jesus Christ, it ultimately brought salvation to all people. So big type there connected. All right, so let's look at the questions there. It says here, use the map and the text of Genesis 37 to answer the questions. You're going to need to get your marker out or a pencil out or something there to work through this here. Now, on the first one, it says, draw arrows on the map to show the path Joseph took to find his brothers. So, does anybody remember where he left to go find them? He left Hebron. Okay, so no doubt he's going to go from one city to the next, and he's going to what city ultimately? Well, Dotham's where he ends up, but where is he intending to go when he leaves? Shechem, okay? And where does he end up at? Dothan, right? So go ahead and draw an arrow from Hebron. Most likely he went through Bethel in the process, gets to Shechem, and then makes it to Dothan. Okay? Number 2, compare Genesis 37:25 to Jeremiah 8:22 and Jeremiah 46:11. What similarity do you see? So let's have someone do the Genesis 37:25. Who wants to do that one real quick? Read it out loud for us. Okay, Bill? Okay, if I can get the one that'll do the Jeremiah 8:22. We're going to have them all read together here. Jeremiah 8:22. Who'll do that for me? You'll do it? Okay. He's ready to read that one. And then I need someone who'll read the Jeremiah 46:11. Okay. Wayne will do that one. Okay. When you all are ready, go ahead. Okay. Gilead, there's a name there, Gilead. I want you to see what's connected with Gilead, as he mentioned. Okay, go ahead, Brett. You got 8:22, Jeremiah 8:22. So he says, is there no balm in Gilead? Balm in Gilead. Interesting. That balm is connected to Gilead. Okay? Wayne. What is a balm? You probably know the word, don't you? Most of you know what a balm is. We're not talking about the thing that explodes. Another thing. It's a type of medicine, right, that's used to heal a wound or used to help something that's hurting on the skin. Okay, balm is used 3 different times here, connected to Gilead 3 different times. Yes, sir. It is. It's not in a city. It's not actually there. I'm sorry. Let me show you where it's at. It is there. I'm sorry, but it's not mentioned. This is the Jordan River right here, that little line with you got the way up here is the Sea of Galilee. You got the Dead Sea down here, and you got that line. That's a river. That's the Jordan River. On the other side of the Jordan River is Gilead. So I want you guys to write that in there so you remember. Right across from Dothan, yep. Gilead, Gilead. Sorry about that. I thought that was on the map. Okay, so it's on the other side of that river that you see coming down the main line of Israel. Okay, all right. So from that understanding, what route from the map is found? We got another thing we want to look at here. What route from the map is found in Numbers 20, verse 17? Now, I want you to look up here first before you read that. Up here at the top, you got a little key that's telling you what these 2 different, there are 2 different routes in there. Did you see there are 2 of them? One of them called the Via Maris, which is the one with the more dashing-looking route, and then the one that's got the dots is called the King's Highway. Let's look up Numbers 20, verse 17, see which one is mentioned there. You want to read it? Okay, go ahead. So we see the King's Highway actually is coming down from Damascus. It kind of splits off from Damascus and goes down to the top of the the Red Sea, which is called, at that spot, it's called the Gulf of Aqaba, if you remember that from the video we watched a few weeks back. And then it crosses over the top of the Gulf of Suez, which is the other part of the Red Sea, and then it works its way into Egypt there. In fact, actually, if you were to go through and look between the Gulf of Aqaba and the Gulf of Suez, that actually is where Egypt's border starts in that area, at least at that point it was, and makes its way there. And then we see the Via Maris. It looks like it's going all the way from the Euphrates River, works its way into Damascus, but goes along the sea coast, the Mediterranean sea coast, follows the sea coast all the way into Egypt, and once again gets at that place. So there are all these trade routes. In between all these trade routes, you're going to have a lot of little crisscross trade routes where they cross from one trade route to the other as they're going into different towns and so forth. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so let's look at the next one here. Draw an arrow. Now, if you remember where Gilead is, it's on the other side of the Jordan River. Draw an arrow from the region of Gilead to Dothan. So from the region to the town. So you should have a short little arrow going across the sea, or going across the Jordan River into Dothan. Now, if they're leaving Gilead, which Gilead seems to be a center place for balm, which they're picking up, they're taking balm from Gilead. Where are they taking it to? Well, where are they intending to go? Where do we know they end up at? To Egypt. They're intending to go and sell the balm of Gilead down in Egypt. And just as they happen to be coming over there, and just as Joseph happens to be showing up at Dothan, they meet. Now, is that just a big coincidence? That they just happen to meet at the same time? No. Huh? It must be God's doing. All right, so here's the next question. If the traders continue the same general direction, leaving from Gilead, which is probably they're crossing another trade route, some kind of a minor trade route from one place to another, what general direction would they be heading to then? Which major trade route are they going to be heading to? The Via Maris. Okay. It's up there on your key at the top. See Via Maris up there at the top? Okay. And then number 6. Was it a matter of coincidence or lucky timing that arranged the events that would take Joseph to Egypt at the same time? Where they all are there at the same time? Okay, I already asked that question, didn't I? But is it coincidence, lucky, or is God working through it? Yeah. God works through all of these things, doesn't He? And what sometimes we have trouble seeing God in the midst of things, God works through everything. The Bible says, for of Him, through Him, and to Him be all things. You can't exclude Him from anything. Even though maybe you don't see it or don't understand it, don't think it's right, don't like it, whatever, He's working through all of it. Let's ask a question on this way. How's He doing with the coronavirus? Is He working through that one? Does he have a purpose in it? Whether you believe whatever your viewpoint on coronavirus turns out being, is God working through it? Yes. He is working through it. How many people do you know have been saved through it? I don't know anybody who's been saved through it. How do you know that people haven't been? Think about people who've been fearful of death, and all of a sudden now they're brought to the point of thinking they might be one. Do you think that might be an opportunity by which God can use to help them see they need a Savior? Or it's also God works it and uses it as a means by which to purify people, to help people realize who they're trusting in. What am I trusting in? Do I trust God in the midst of trouble? Yes. And this is one of those things that helps us see whether we do or not, don't we? Could be the way God judges at times, yeah. Disasters are at the hand of God. Remember Noah's flood? Now this is nothing compared to Noah's flood, but do you remember Noah's flood? God said it over and over through the flood. He said, I do send upon the earth. Behold, I do it, even I. In fact, that's how He worded it. Send a flood of waters upon the earth. He wanted to make it very clear, this is not an accident. This is my working. I'm working through this, okay? So we need to remember that God works through everything, regardless of whether it was good or evil or people that were evil involved behind it. And obviously, this was evil being done, wasn't it? What they did to their brother Joseph. Joseph, you had it coming. It doesn't matter. This was wrong, what they did. Okay? So let's finish with some questions, and then we'll be done. We're going to be done early today. Okay. Number one, the accounts of the patriarchs have many repeated themes of sin and repeated themes of God's grace and mercy. As you think of your own life, what are some themes of sin that you notice, and some themes of how God has graciously restored you or used evil for a greater good? Anybody think of some examples in your own life? Anybody want to give an example? Nobody's got any? I'm sure I know some people in this room do. Okay, I'll read it again. The accounts of the patriarchs have many repeated themes of sin and repeated themes of God's grace and mercy. As you think over your own life, what are some themes of sin that you notice, and some themes of how God has graciously restored you or used evil for a greater good? Anybody ever seen something horrible happen in your life and you say, hey, man, if that had not happened in my life, I would never have seen this in my life? Where God used something through that, used the evil to do something good in my life. Or showed me mercy in the midst of when I didn't deserve it. Yes. We're talking about personal, in your personal life. Yep. But he chose to be used of God to be as an agent of mercy toward them. Yeah. Okay. That's a good way to understand it. Yep. I heard someone tell a story. It was Ray, actually, had told the story. He said a few weeks back his sister was in her car, and I don't know if she'd pulled over, was in the parking lot or whatever, and somebody come into her car, smashed in her car, said, "Get going, we need to leave." She had blood on her hands, blood on her, whatever. And Ray said that she started driving her to a bus stop that she wanted her to go to. And she was scared, because this lady's psychotic or something's going on. And she just wanted to get her out of her car. And the lady started to turn off the music that was on there, because it said his sister had Christian music playing. And started turning off. And the sister said, "That's my car, my music. Well, listen, I'm driving you where you want to go. I want to listen to that." And as soon as she started to say that, the lady started attacking his sister while they're in the car. And so she pulls over really quick and starts to get out of the car, runs away. And a guy is seeing this somewhere down the street, sees what's going on, pulls out his pistol and comes after and tries to get the woman. The woman gets out and runs away. Well, in order to kind of make sure everything was okay, because she got her head bashed into the side of the window or whatever, she went to the hospital, have checked out. When she went there, she found out that she had clogged arteries in her neck. And she said, and the doctor said, had you not come in and seen that, you would be dead in a few weeks. Said that about Ray's sister. They said, but now we can help clean those out. What a horrible thing to go through, to find out you needed to get your arteries cleaned. I was like, God works through evil, doesn't he? If you're not going to a doctor, I'm going to make you go. Yeah. I think that's an interesting story. Anybody remember Brother Schmutzler we had last year? And he told the story in one of his missionary letters how he had to pull off to get gas. And his next stop was where he was going to be getting off at. And he said, I went off to get gas 5 minutes at the gas pump, went back, got on, and then I got stuck on the highway for 30 minutes. And I know I've only got a mile or two, and I needed to then I'd make it to the next exit. And he said, when I got to that exit, I realized a big old fuel truck had blown up right there on the road, melted the asphalt or the pavement or whatever, and the sign all around it. He said, that was where I would have been had I not gone off. You know, what appeared to be an inconvenience turned out to be a blessing. So does God know how to work through those things? Yeah.
So there was this one missionary that told me a story about he was going to have a church meeting outside because he didn't have a church yet building, and so he had all the chairs set up, and he was getting the camera stuff out, and it started to rain. So he couldn't do it, and then he came back the next day. And he learned that there was people across the street from him with guns ready to shoot him.
Yeah, that was our Sam Thomas, missionary to India, that gave that testimony. Yeah, that was neat. Said that he was going to go have a street evangelism thing in India, and he said the rain came out and was going to damage their electronic stuff they were going to use, and so they decided just to halt it, but found out later that somebody was intending to kill him right in that area, and how God used that used rain and what appeared to be a little bit of an irritation to save him from something worse that could have happened. So, all right, let me give you another one here. In the series of events, one sin led to another to cover up what had become a cycle of sin. How can we learn from this in order to avoid similar cycles in our own lives? Okay, well, that's what we're trying to say. What have you learned and how to apply it? Pay attention to the past. You know what's a good one? Come clean. Make things right when you know you need to make them right. That's how you break cycles. You know, if you keep covering it up and covering it up, you just keep repeating more and more, right? I heard someone say it this way: I don't have to remember everything. If I lie, I have to remember every lie I told. Every time I come across, and who it is I told the lie to cover up what I did. But if I just tell the truth, I don't have to worry about remembering my lies.
Eventually it's going to come out in the end anyway.
Yeah, eventually it comes out. Yeah, most of the time it does, doesn't it? All right, let's do one more. What consolation do you find in your own life when you consider how God eventually used this horrible event in Joseph's life to bring about a good end? Hey, it's kind of the same parallel that we've talked about already. But anybody want to comment on that? What consolations or comfort do you find for your own life when you consider how God eventually used this horrible event in Joseph's life to bring about a good end? God can use even you for good. Is there a verse we know that you hear quoted quite often here, around here? Romans 8:28. Say it. You said you quoted it, right? Or you referenced it? There you go. That God works through all things, doesn't He? Even the bad things. As hard as that had to have been. And we think about it, He didn't just get sold to slavery. What else happens? We know the story, don't we? He's imprisoned for a time, and he's forgotten in prison after he did some good. And then all of a sudden it turns around where God starts to reveal what He was doing all along. What Joseph may not have been able to see, God was still doing. That's good. Yeah. Now let's go ahead and pray, and we'll be dismissed, and we'll come back in about 15 minutes. I'm going to ask